So want to thank you all for joining us on an evening for this webinar. I'm going to kick things off just by introducing myself and our organization and tell you a little bit about life sciences. So my name's Jason Field. I'm the president and CEO of Life Sciences Ontario, and I'm just going to share my screen here and walk through a few slides to just give you a quick overview of our organization and our sector. So I don't know if any of you have read this book, Start With Why by Simon Sinek, or if you've seen his TED Talks. If not, I would really highly recommend it. The thesis of Sinek's work is that people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So I've taken to starting all of my talks with telling you why I do what I do for LSO. And this is what I really came up with when I was thinking about, what gets me out of bed in the morning. And it's that I believe that life sciences is Canada's greatest untapped opportunity to help people. And I chose these words very specifically because I do believe it's untapped opportunity. We have fantastic science here in Canada. We have some of the best minds, some of the best young talent coming up. And we really haven't converted that into the commercial successes that I think we are able to attain as a nation, as a life sciences sector in Ontario and across Canada. And when I say to help people, I'm not just talking about things like unmet needs in diseases and helping people who are suffering within our healthcare system. But I'm also talking about creating the next generation of jobs and careers, increase productivity through the use of science. We think about climate change and the challenges we play there. Life sciences really has the opportunity to address many of the challenges that we face as a country and as a society today. So when I talk about life sciences, it may surprise some of you that I'm not just talking about the pharmaceutical industry or medical device industry. I'm actually talking about the entire bioeconomy. And so this includes the health sector, the things that you may immediately recognize, like pharmaceuticals and medtech, but it also includes agri-food biotechnology and industrial biotechnology, bioenergy, all of these areas working together, and also other areas that are intersecting with life sciences. So like artificial intelligence, for example, and machine learning. So it really is a diverse industry that we are representing. A little bit about LSO. We're not a new organization. We've been around since 1989. No, I am old, but I wasn't around for the start of it. I was still relatively young then. We are a fully member-funded, not-for-profit association. So we don't have any ongoing support from government. All of our support comes through our membership. And we're really driven by this mission to foster the commercial success for the industry. And we do this primarily through advocacy. So we do a lot of lobbying work, telling government, the types of policies that are needed within the life sciences sector to help us succeed as an industry. We do a lot of education webinars, and we do a lot of, promoting science and the sector through events like this and others. We really kind of serve as a central hub of connectivity for the entire life sciences community. And our values are really important to us, especially, representing the diversity and being inclusive in all that we do as a sector. And also ensuring that all of the advocacy work we're doing is rooted in sound science and data and evidence-based decision-making. And that's what we want to see reflected by our public policymakers as well. So really quickly, this gives you a flavor of our community. These are our members. And you'll see that, it's not just, big companies, there's small companies, there's service providers, we have student members, we have academic institutes. So we don't just represent industry, we represent the entire life sciences ecosystem. And that ecosystem makes an incredible contribution to the Ontario economy. We directly employ about 90,000 Ontarians in the private sector. And when you look at the indirect and the induced jobs, it's nearly 200,000 people that are employed in this sector. And a closer look of how we compare to other industries, we actually compare quite favorably. And keep in mind that this is only the private sector. If we were looking at the employment, including the public sector, including healthcare workers, doctors and nurses, etc., we would actually be the largest employer in Ontario, with 1 in 13 Ontarians actually employed with jobs that are in some way connected and affiliated with the life sciences industry. So it is a significant industry. So I'm going to stop there, and we'll get to what you came here for, which is to hear from our panelists. So I'm going to ask each of our panelists to please, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your education, your background, and a little bit about your career journey in terms of how you came to where you are today. So I'm going to start with Magda. So Magda, over to you.
Thanks, Jason. Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Magda O'Sullivan. I guess I'll start at the beginning. I have completed my undergrad at McMaster University. I did a Bachelor of Science and ended up taking a year off after finishing that, not knowing exactly what I wanted to do next, before I decided to pursue a master's degree. I did my Master's of Biotechnology at the University of Toronto, and I was fortunate enough to have an internship component as part of my program. So during my master's, I did my internship at Sanofi, where I was a lab technician, and ended up continuing in that role even after I graduated from my master's. I quickly realized that I was not cut out to be in the lab, and that's when I started to look at other opportunities within the pharmaceutical industry, but more on the commercial side of the business. And that led me to moving to GSK as a sales rep. Spent some time there, and then ultimately moved to marketing at Novo Nordisk, where I am today. And my current role is product manager in marketing at Novo Nordisk. So that kind of sums up my journey.
Thanks, Magda, and we'll get into some more details on that journey that you just described. And it's funny when you're talking about some of your experiences, because both Sanofi and GSK are, of course, big employers within the biopharmaceutical space in Ontario. And within that community, we hear so many people that have passed through both of those organizations during their career journey. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. Ingrid, over to you next.
Yeah, for sure. So good evening, everyone. My name is Ingrid Fung. I am an investment director with a venture capital firm based out of California called Finistere Ventures. And I ended up here completely accidentally. So my undergrad was in developmental biology from the University of Toronto. After that, I went to the University of Western Ontario and did my master's in cell and molecular biology, specializing in plant-pest interactions. And at the time, I had thought it would be great to do my master's focus on plant sciences and then go back and do my PhD on something that was more traditional biotech focused. That way I would be well covered on kind of the full spectrum of what you could possibly do in life sciences. As I was finishing up my master's, I kind of realized that I really didn't want to end up in academia. And I had no idea what life on the private sector side looked like. So I decided to take some time off between my master's and my PhD to go out and really get a job, network, get an understanding of what industry looked like. And in that process, ended up landing a job at a pharmaceutical services company. One thing led to another. I got my second job at an accelerator, and then ended up at a venture capital fund shortly after that. So you don't necessarily need to know what you want to do, but if you're flexible and open to the opportunities that your skill set fits with, you can find some really interesting jobs in life sciences.
Thanks, Ingrid. I think that's really good advice. I know that I think all of us on the line today have had some fairly non-linear pathways, I would say, and I think that's pretty common with everyone that I've spoken to in life sciences, and so lots of opportunities if you're open to them, as you put it. Andrea, could you tell me a little bit about your journey to where you are? Again, a very different pathway that you have to describe.
Definitely. Thanks, Jason. And it's interesting that I think all of us will say, I had no idea at a certain point. So everyone who's here listening, I think there are 187 participants. You're all ahead of the curve, trying to figure that out about what you want to do. So good for you for at least asking these questions. I maybe have a little bit more of a linear journey because I have like one data point, but I started a company straight out of my university, well, while I was at university, and I've been working on it for 6 years and building it for 6 years. But I studied engineering in university, specifically a type of engineering called mechatronics, which is essentially robotics and automation. I didn't want to do that going into university. I wanted to be a teacher. But I took a coding course my first year, fell in love with it, and then started down the robot path. I joined a team and then eventually led a team of humans that built robots that play soccer by themselves, and we competed them around the world. I was a huge nerd, still am. It's totally fine if you are too. High five. I also played a lot of sports. I did a lot of leadership opportunities. I did 3 or 4 different co-op placement, so you can have real engineering work experience while you're in school at university in order to figure out what you like and what you don't like. And somehow in my final year, I decided to start a company, and that company was building a tool or software in order to measure stress to support people with cognitive disabilities to live more independently. And what I really loved about that is that I could use everything that I had learned from my engineering degree and the problem solving, and then from the leadership and the complex stakeholder relations and everything, I could put all that together in order to have a real impact in people's lives and be able to build a company. So that's what I'm doing now, and we now employ 6 people. We actually just hired another person, so we're growing as a company, but it's really exciting to start from basically an idea, multiple ideas, and then now all of a sudden, have all this impact and be able to really also, be an employer and create that opportunity.
Thanks, Andrea. And Brian just gave me a nudge here to share a bit about my background too, because it's, as I said, it's pretty non-linear as well. And so if anybody has questions about my pathway, feel free to ask me as well, even though my role here is a moderator, but I'll participate. I'm actually a chemist by training. And so I'm a PhD chemist, organic chemist. My PhD was actually materials chemistry. But I ended up getting a job after graduate school in the pharmaceutical industry doing contract manufacture of active pharmaceutical ingredients. And so I did that for about 5 years, decided that I wanted to go back into academics. And while I was deciding on the postdoc, I kind of had an opportunity to get a job in the provincial government. It was just something that was serendipitous. And so I thought, I really didn't think of it seriously. I thought it'll pay the bills while I figured out what the heck I want to do with my life. And so I started work with the Ontario government. I actually fell in love with policy work. It wasn't anything that I was trained to do. It wasn't anything that I had really had an interest in. I wasn't a policy wonk before joining the government, but I became one quite quickly. It was fascinating. And when people ask me about that transition, I say, public policy is a lot like science. Most of what you do fails. But when you do succeed, it's usually very rewarding. It's very impactful. So I did that for another 5 years. And then I had an opportunity to join Life Science Ontario. That was 10 years ago. And again, it was one of those things, as Andrea described, where it combines the things that I kind of learned along my career path, right? It's science, it's public policy, it's communication, it's all of those things kind of coming together. So I've been here since and still really enjoying the experience. So just a reminder, you can ask questions in the Q&A. I've got a bunch, but you don't want to hear me ask all the questions. So please, please do put some in there. I have a few from the registration as well that I'll get to. But maybe we'll start off with, I like this question. Is there something that you wish you knew in school that you know now about career in sciences that you wish you could go back in time and tell your younger self? So I'll throw that out there. Anybody, who wants to go first? Magda, you look like you're ready to go.
I'll kick it off. I think, and it's a really good question. And I think the first thing that comes to my mind is knowing just how many different types of jobs and opportunities there are for individuals who have a science background. So when I graduated my undergrad a while back, I basically felt like I had two options. It was continuing my education or working in a lab. So I did my thesis, and then I was thinking, okay, that's going to be my next step, or I'm going to have to do a master's. And ultimately, I ended up doing my master's. But when I actually had the opportunity to do an internship and work at a pharmaceutical company, I learned how many different functions there are in the company alone. So taking the pharmaceutical company as an example, there's sales, there's marketing, there's regulatory, clinical. I mean, the list goes on. And that's only looking at one piece of the umbrella of life sciences sector that Jason spoke to earlier. So really, back then, I didn't think there were any options. And I thought, oh, as a science graduate, you have to stay in academia, but you actually don't. And even if you look at the experience among us here tonight, the panelists, it's so broad. We've gone all sorts of different directions. And I wish I knew that back then, because maybe I would have made some different choices along the way. But nonetheless, here I am. And yeah, that's the first thing that popped into my head for sure.
Thanks, Magda. Ingrid.
I would say the thing that I wish I knew, particularly when I was in school and still figuring my way out, was that a lot of the things that you do outside of your class are really going to translate and impact how well you perform or help you figure out what you want to do in the future. And so I think, life sciences programs tends to attract a certain type of student, right? Like you have to really like what you do, but jumping in tends to attract I would say, students who are very serious about their studies. And don't get me wrong, your academics are absolutely really, really important. But a lot of what you do outside of class, developing your soft skills, your social skills, your communication skills, all the things that you do for fun, those will really translate in your work life in the future too. So I think I would have told my younger self not to be so hard on myself for wanting to do all those fun things and maybe not placing 120% of my effort in studies, because the other stuff is absolutely critical and important as well.
I really hope we're recording this because I want to play that back for my daughter. She has a real problem with that, Ingrid. So we're going to have to connect and have you talk to her. Andrea.
I mean, those are both great pieces of advice for former selves and for the people in the audience, but I have a couple of them, so I'm going to cheat. The first is that there's so many ways to learn now, and so there's like the traditional path of going to school, learning in the classroom, but then as Ingrid said, there's all of these opportunities outside of the classroom to join teams, and there are ways you can learn new skills online through YouTube or all of these online courses. And so I think just being curious and really trying to discover what you like and what you don't like is a really big thing, and also being able to develop your skills. And with that, you don't know what you don't know, so just be curious and continue to try and find out. The third is ask for what you want. Someone told me that in later of college, and if you need something or if you want an introduction, just ask for it, because the worst thing that can happen is that you're back in the same place. And the last thing is be prepared for opportunities. If an opportunity comes your way, do whatever you can to be prepared and make the most out of it.
That's great, Andrea. There's a couple of questions that have come in from the audience, and I'm going to kind of combine these two because I think they're related. So one of them was framed, "What is the most challenging part when choosing a career path?" And then the other person asked, "How do you know you want to do something for the rest of your life?" So obviously big decisions when you're making these choices, and a lot of pressure on young people to pick a lane, so to speak. So what's your thoughts on this? Who wants to go first? Ingrid or Andrea? Andrea, you're off mute. Go ahead.
I mean, this is just my opinion, but I don't think you have to know what you want to do for the rest of your life. I really think it's all about being curious and exploring options and, giving it enough time to figure out if you like it or not. But you definitely don't have to choose one career path forever anymore. And especially because, as Magda said, so many roles are intersecting now, that there are opportunities for, your unique set of skills and interests.
Yeah, I would say you never know you want to do something for the rest of your life. And I think the important thing to remember is that you can always change your mind. For the longest time, I thought I was going to end up in the lab doing research, and that is not at all what I did. And I have to say, when I first decided I wasn't going to go back and do my PhD right away and take a job in industry, I thought I was giving like throwing my life away, right? Like, what am I going to do with my life? I'm making a huge mistake. And it's the best decision I've ever made in terms of giving myself the space and the permission to kind of go and figure it out and not know what I want to do and just go with my gut and say, look, this sounds interesting. I'm going to try it. And if it doesn't work out and I don't like it, I can always change my mind and take the learnings and the skills that I got from that experience and take it to my next job and do better in that, right? So I think it's important to, as I said in the beginning, stay flexible, and don't expect yourself to figure it out right away. Like, I have been working for the better part of 10 years, and I have to say, I still might change my career eventually, right? Nothing is perfect. Every job will have its downside, so expect that. But, do something that makes you happy and that excites you, and you can't go wrong.
Yeah, I would echo everything that's already been said. I don't even know what I want to do for the rest of my life. I'm doing my current role right now and I'm enjoying it, but who knows where life will take me. I think Jason brought up a really good point at the beginning of the presentation, really understanding the why. Like, it's hard to get out of bed in the morning and do a job. It ends up being the majority of your day. So you really want to have a good understanding of why you're doing it. And as long as you know why and you feel happy and confident about that, you'll enjoy your job. But the environment around us continuously changes. And the pandemic probably resulted in a whole different set of jobs out there now. So you don't know where life is going to take you. I think it's already been mentioned, but you just kind of go with the flow, and you learn. And the more you talk to different people, the more you understand what other opportunities could be there for you, what might be interesting. And even today, I'm so interested to learn about the journeys of the other panelists, yeah, so just keep an open mind.
Yeah, I think that's some really good advice, Magda, and it reminded me that it's as you're going through your career journey, I was thinking about that question of if I had to go back in time, that one thing that I would tell myself, and you reminded me of that, and it was really kind of know yourself, right? And really try to understand, and be true to yourself as well. You have to be honest and be self-aware, right? Know what are the types of situations, what are the type of environments that you can thrive in, and the ones that you can't, right? That's a really important thing. And sometimes I find people don't give that a lot of thought ahead of time until they're in those situations and realize it. So it's something to always look for. So lots of different experiences will help you build that awareness. And of course, attending events like these and listening to these sorts of experiences as well. Great question coming in from the audience. how sure were you that you would get into the university program of your choice? And does it matter what university you go to in terms of building a career and networking? Any thoughts on that?
I can maybe try to start. So I wasn't sure I would get in. I had pretty high grades and, a lot of extracurricular activities. But I think if I had applied now, I don't think I would have been accepted to engineering at UBC. You never know. And so I don't have a good answer for you there, but I will say that as an employer, now I don't necessarily look at what schools people go to. I know a lot of companies do, but I do have limited resources when I post on job boards and I'm screening candidates. So I do have to, choose a couple, and they might not be the same every time. But we do hire a lot of people who send in their resumes to us and tell us specifically why they want to work for us, and how they think their skill set could help us. So even if it's not, a traditional kind of career path, there are always other ways to, or you go to like the top universities or something like that. We just hired someone from like a technical institute, but he had emailed us and said, these are the things that, based on my background, I think I can bring to your company and why I want to work there. And so I think that there are lots of opportunities. And if you don't go to, the University of Toronto and the ones that people post on a lot, then you just have to be a little bit more creative in how you reach out to people.
I guess a follow-on to this question that was brought up in the chat was, since all of us have experienced sort of non-linear pathways, does it even matter? And, Magda, this one was kind of directed at you a little bit in that, given your background in science, and then sort of transitioning into the business side of things, did you find that there was opportunities with your employers to sort of build those skill sets that you may not have had necessarily formal education around?
So not to give a plug to the Masters of Biotechnology at U of T, but the nice thing about the program was that it did offer that internship component, and it really, I guess the tagline of the program is science meets business. So it really did take all those science students and introduce them to the business side, and then being immersed obviously in the industry and having the opportunity to do that internship, I had a chance to learn without doing an MBA the business side of things. But of course, it doesn't have to be that way, and not every program will have an internship component. And to sort of go back to that question, even about the importance of going to a certain type of or a certain university with a certain name, I don't think that's necessary, but this was kind of brought up before. There's so much more to just academics, and it's all about how do you differentiate yourself between the competition? Because there's going to be a lot of people applying to a job, and it's not going to come down to, oh, you went to U of T versus maybe someone went to a different school. But it is going to be important to show and demonstrate what other skills you acquired through other means. So maybe you have very strong communication and presentation skills that you were able to acquire through another way. Like maybe you were doing volunteering, or maybe you were like, and it doesn't all have to be about academics. So you're able to brush up and learn some of these skills through other means. And I think that was brought up earlier in the presentation, and I think it's such an important thing to remember is to really branch out and get involved and network and understand and just listen to other people's career paths and see where you can gain some skills or some experience that can really help you differentiate yourself from somebody else.
Yeah, I would pile on to that. So for clarity, I wasn't sure I would get into the university program I wanted to get into. I graduated in the year of the double cohort. So everything seemed like it was up in the air because you had double the number of students going into university, right? So I wasn't completely sure. And even though I'm in venture capital, which is a finance focused job and investing in numbers, we're looking at buying portions of companies, I don't have any formal business training. And so this is a little bit, probably a little bit silly sounding, but when I finished my master's, I was only a technical person. I literally signed up for Mars, a course at Mars, the accelerator that was called Entrepreneurship 101. And I took some, classes on Coursera about, what clinical research looked like and what commercialization looked like. So I could actually speak the lingo and I could conceptually understand what was going on. And that really helped me with my networking. So I would say on the knowing that I would get into the program, definitely didn't know. And on the qualification certification piece, I think that if you can demonstrate that you have an ability to learn, that you have the capacity to be able to communicate and speak the language of whatever life sciences industry that you're trying to get into, you've got a good chance at that. And then the third piece I would say is network. I bothered anyone that would speak to me when I graduated, like literally messaged people on LinkedIn, asked like friends to speak to their parents that I knew maybe had a job that I was interested in. And through that, a lot of people started realizing that I was interested in doing certain jobs. They made introductions for me. And aside from my first job after I graduated, I've never actually kind of applied for a job walking through the door after that. It's all been through networks and introductions and people saying, hey, maybe you should go talk to Ingrid. So yeah, just food for thought. Don't necessarily need the qualifications on paper if you have acquired the skills and you have the capability to learn.
I'm going to pick up. Yeah, go ahead, Andrea.
I was just going to say, to add to that, take advantage if you're a student or you're looking at switching careers, take advantage of that status. And if you find someone with a job that you want, or like a similar role that you want, or at a company that you're interested in, ask them for advice first and learn more about that position and how it works and the culture at the company. So when Ingrid says network, you don't have to know them already. You can just, reach out to them cold and say, hey, I'm a student exploring X. I'm interested in you for these reasons. And people love helping students, and people love helping people who are like trying to figure out their career path. So definitely take advantage of that.
All right, so I'm going to come back to Ingrid and Magda in a moment, because both of you were volunteers with LSO, and I want you to tell us a little bit about your experience. But before I do that, I'm going to direct one question at Andrea, and this is one that has been a hot one on the Q&A chart here. You own your own company, you hire people at your organization. Do you have any advice for new grads trying to get their foot into the door of, a life sciences organization like yours?
I mean, I think it's a great question. I think I kind of just touched on it, that I would encourage you to talk to people in the industry, talk to other people at the company that you think might work with the role that they're hiring for. Even if you see, an open role, maybe reach out to a couple of people on LinkedIn and ask them for advice and learn about the company before applying or after you apply or something like that, so you can get a few tips. You don't have to only apply cold to the job board. You can definitely reach out to other people at the company to find out more information. And when we are reviewing resumes and job applications, we always consider non-traditional sources of experience. So if you have taught yourself how to code through YouTube tutorials, or have your own projects and you want to submit something in lieu of having a job experience, especially for people who are overlooked for a lot of roles, you can submit those and build out your resume, based on your curiosity and your ability to learn that way. When we're such a small company, we do like people who take that initiative and ask questions and reach out to us. So even for big companies, I think that that's a really good way to meet people and get your foot in the door for sure.
Thanks, Andrea. One of the questions we had, and it's related to the volunteer experience, so I'm going to just tie this in for you, Ingrid and Magda. And this may not be applicable because I know neither of you were in high school when you were volunteering for LSO, but the student asked about opportunities in life sciences outside of school as a high school student. So maybe if you have some thoughts on that, but then also tell us a little bit about your experience in volunteering as part of our community. And I don't know who wants to go first. Magda?
So I'll try to tackle the first one about volunteering in life sciences in high school. I mean, great for great initiative for looking at opportunities like that. I can tell you that I definitely didn't have that on my radar yet. I think, you know, there's so many other skills that you can build through volunteer work that early on in your career, or I mean, still in being in high school, that you don't necessarily have to be focusing just on life sciences. I think things like communication, presentation, building that confidence, all that you can do through all sorts of different ways of volunteering, and doesn't have to be specific to life sciences, but are so transferable and will really aid you along the way. Like, for example, you know, communication and presentation skills. I've had, that was those are some key skills that I've had to have throughout my entire career, from networking to presenting lab results in a lab, to having customer engagements when I was a rep, to marketing products. Throughout the whole time, it's definitely a type of skill that I would encourage you to pursue, and maybe don't be so stressed out and focused on just life sciences at that point. In regards to my volunteer work, yeah, definitely volunteering with life sciences Ontario has had a huge impact on my career path. I started volunteering when I was doing my master's. I really didn't know much about the industry. I didn't know about life sciences sector much. I didn't know about pharma much, but it gave me the opportunity to meet people. And I think networking has been brought up in this conversation many, many times already. And it is such an important skill to have. And it really opens so many doors for you. And I didn't learn that until I was doing my master's. But I met so many people with so many different jobs and different experiences and different career paths. And it really opened up my eyes to what I wanted to do, and more importantly, how I was going to get there. And so throughout my career, I would continue to volunteer and built some really strong relationships. And some of these individuals became my mentors. And all of a sudden I had a group of people in my life that I could lean on for advice and for guidance as I navigated my career. And, you know, sometimes it ends up being that through your network, you're able to get a job. And sometimes it means that someone can provide you some good advice to not take a job. And I think all those pieces became such a big part of it. And I don't think I'd be where I am today if I didn't meet the people that I met through my volunteer work at Life Sciences Ontario.
Thanks, Magda. I actually still remember one of the first days I started with LSO, and was one of our breakfast events, and was the first day I met you, and it was Natalie from RBC that were running the breakfast meetings. And I just remember the energy both of you had in terms of, you know, your enthusiasm and your engagement with running those events. It was really exciting. Ingrid, you were a volunteer with us on our networking events. So tell us a little bit about that experience.
Yeah, so I volunteered both on the mentorship committee, I think, and the networking events piece. And so, yeah, I did it after I got my first job, which was doing business development for a pharmaceutical services company, recruitment firm type place. And so, you know, it was great because it was part of my job. I got paid to like meet people and build my network, which was incredible. I actually got my second job offer or met the person who would end up hiring me at an LSO breakfast event. So I had shown up, you know, at an LSO breakfast event, thank you, Magda, and Bioenterprise Corporation, which is an accelerator out of Guelph, was presenting and talking about all this great work that they were doing in ag biotech. And Dave Sparden, who's the CEO of that organization, was there, and he and I got to chatting, and he was like, wait, your background's in you know, plant molecular bio, what are you doing at a pharma company? You should come work for me. So if that's not an endorsement for volunteering or showing up at LSO events, I don't know what is. But it was a really great experience for me in terms of, you know, being able to learn from other people who were established in the industry as to what my options were, and being able to have really build a community and a sounding board for myself. Having just started, most of my friends had gone back to do their PhDs or were still in academia, so I didn't really know a lot of people in industry. So going and volunteering at LSO events, not only did I get to build a network of people who were further advanced than me in their careers, so I could learn from all of their experiences, but I also got to build a network of peers who were going through a similar process, kind of 1 or 2 years out from graduating, trying to figure out what career path they wanted to go after. And we were all dealing with very similar things. So it was great just to be able to have that network. And I'm still friends with a lot of those people. I still use those people as my sounding board for career decisions, for, hey, what do you think of this technology that I'm looking at? How does your company think about this? And I think, being able to volunteer and be engaged or plug into a community like LSO really will empower you in the long run, and will be useful in ways that you don't even realize when you're first setting out and meeting these people, which is why I said, network, and any tool or organization that can help you network, plug into that, because you don't need to do all the hard work and the active searching and the messaging people on LinkedIn yourself. You can show up at an LSO event and have those people who are already willing to talk to young people be there.
Thanks, Ingrid. We have a question that's coming in that I think is directed at me. They're asking whether or not we at LSO offer co-op placements, particularly co-op placements for high school. Unfortunately, no, we do not. We're a relatively small organization, but many of our members do. And you can actually look at our member directory and see all of the companies and organizations that are members of LSO. Many of those do have those types of programs. I'd also like to direct people on the line to take a look, if you haven't already, look at an organization called BioTalent Canada. And the reason I mention that, I actually, full disclosure, sit on the board of BioTalent Canada, but they offer a number of programs, wage subsidy programs to support internships, co-op positions, as well as full-time employment. And they actually can offer employers wage subsidies, so they will pay a portion of your wages as a new hire in some circumstances if you're eligible. So if you're a recent grad looking for a job, familiarize yourself with those programs, because that's another way that you can sell yourself to a potential employer, and a value proposition that you can say, hey, I'm actually eligible for this program if you want to apply with me, and actually have a big part, up to half of my salary, paid by these programs. So learn a little bit more about that. Some great tools on the website as well. All right. I had a question here about the difference between life sciences and health sciences, and which one would you recommend for someone who aspires to be a doctor? None of us are doctors here, or medical doctors at least, but I don't know if somebody wants to take a crack at this. I mean, from my perspective, like I showed that diagram at the start, life sciences I consider the whole bioeconomy and bioecosystem, including agri-food biotechnology, which Ingrid does a lot of work in, industrial biotech, as well as health sciences. So health science is really around human health, whereas life sciences is really biotechnology that's used in any commercial setting. So whether it's for human health technology, it could be for animal health, it could be for environmental health, it could be a productivity technology, anything like that. So which one? I would obviously probably lean towards something in the human health space if you want to be a doctor. So that would be my recommendation. Magda, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, so I'm just thinking back. I'm thinking maybe this is going back to when I was doing my undergrad at McMaster. There's two streams. There's a life sciences stream and a health sciences stream. So maybe this is where the individual's kind of thinking. Life sciences really was more general science versus health science was gearing towards medical. So a lot of the students who went down the health sciences route ended up, it basically prepared them to do their MCATs and then ultimately go into med school. So I don't know if it's specifically about the two different streams, but that's kind of what popped into my mind when the question was asked, and if it was somebody in university, maybe that's what they're referring to.
Yeah, and I think it may be related to that next question too, where somebody asked specifically about physics, right? And McMaster programs in life sciences. So obviously physics might be more directed at that general sciences, whereas something more in the biological space would probably be more directed towards, you know, a medical profession. All right. What would be some extracurricular activities that I can do to ease the path in getting into the university that I want to go to? Any thoughts on extracurriculars?
I would say, just as a general rule of thumb for anything, even if you want to apply to a specific university, it sounds like you might be thinking about what they want to see from you, as opposed to, you know, what you're actually interested in, and exploring, you know, why you're interested in those things, which would really help you understand what you want to do, and be able to develop those interests. So, you know, there's so many extracurriculars and so many different ways to learn. And if you don't like contact sports, don't play rugby, even if they're a huge rugby school. So there are, you know, just find something that, you know, is interesting to you, and figure out how you can learn from it and why you enjoy doing that. And then when you're applying, make sure you state that, you know, you're the opposite of rugby in my head for some reason is chess. So, you know, from, you know, playing chess or the cello, you know, these are the things that you realize you like doing, and why it would help you get that opportunity. So I think for any opportunity, you really have to think about why, you know, what you actually want to do, and why you enjoy doing it, as opposed to only what that other side might be looking for, because you might end up really unhappy that way.
I think that's some good advice.
I think when you're in high school, you're so young that it's a time, I know no teenager wants to hear this, but it's a time to kind of just try things out and figure out what, you know, you like and what you don't like. And I think a big part of what's great about trying a whole bunch of different extracurriculars is you can find the aspects of each that you're interested in. So I did a ton of sports. I, you know, was part of like our science club or debate club, but I also like joined every single team that would take me. And I think just having that breadth of experience and trying different things and taking leadership positions in different types of organizations and extracurriculars, that'll help you learn a lot about dealing with people. And, you know, it doesn't matter what you end up doing, a lot of your job will be interacting with people and being able to work with other people. And so any extracurricular that gives you exposure to that, whatever the context, it'll help you in the long run.
Yeah, and I think it was said really nicely to really focus on what it is that you want to do. You want to make sure you're engaging in activities that you enjoy, and then from that you can tease out what experience you're gaining. So you're on a team sport, playing soccer on a team, great. You've learned, you know, teamwork. You coach maybe some kids, great. You learn leadership skills. Like it's all about teasing out the experience that you gain from those different extracurricular activities. But in the grand scheme of things, you want to be doing things that you enjoy, because there's going to be plenty of time to be working and doing the things that you have to do, that when you're in high school, you still have to make sure you're enjoying it. And every extracurricular activity that you're going to do is going to provide you an experience and provide you and build skills that can be transferable and that you can leverage when applying to schools. It's just about thinking, what is it that I really learned that I can apply to my application here for this university, versus, you know, just looking at like, oh, I have fun kicking the ball around playing soccer, right? So yeah, definitely take the time to do things you love.
I agree with, sorry, go ahead, Andrea.
Sorry, I was just going to say, do be careful though, because if you just join every club, but you never actually attend anything, people can see through that. So make sure when you do, you know, join and you are learning from it, especially if it's a club that the person you're talking to also did, and they can tell that you never, you know, stepped foot in that door, make sure that you're actually the extracurriculars that you do, you spend time on, you learn from, you meet the people. So then if people do check, you know, they have that corroboration, I guess, of your opportunities, and you actually get to learn from those experiences as opposed to just putting it on your resume.
Yeah, I'll maybe add one other thought to this, and I agree with all the panelists. You should really do something you enjoy and that you're engaged in, for sure. In terms of something that will help you along your career path, I find that you know, don't shy away from opportunities to, you know, present in front of people, to communicate verbally as well as written communication. These are soft skills that are very underrated and very important no matter what job or career you go into. So I would also kind of give that some thought to it for opportunities to do that. This is a question that's been voted up, and it's, what does a career in pharmaceuticals look like? Magda, I think that one's directed your way.
Oh, I mean, that's a big question, because I think I already alluded to this earlier, but a pharmaceutical company is made up of so many different functions, and so a career in a pharmaceutical company, I mean, it could be anything. If you have an interest in policy, there's a role for you. If you have an interest in clinical, there's a role for you. If you have an interest in more of sales and marketing, there's a role for you. So really, it's so broad, and there's so many different functions. It's kind of hard for me to answer what kind of career path you take, but I'm pretty sure whatever you're interested in, it can be translated to a role in a pharma company, because it basically has everything, right? So, and even if you're interested in working in a lab, there's a role for you, because there's the early stages of development. So basically anything from, you know, developing a therapeutic to bringing it to commercialization, having it approved from Health Canada, working on the patient access, you know, are there reimbursement opportunities for it, selling the medication, marketing the therapeutic, you know, I totally missed the whole clinical trials of the therapeutic and running all those. And there's, you know, finance, there's a finance component, there's a law component, there's a supply chain component. It's huge. So really, it ultimately comes down to what it is that you're interested in. And I think we talked a lot about, you know, trying to find what you enjoy and what you have a passion for, because it's going to be pretty hard to get up every day and do something that you find very boring. If you don't like accounting, if you don't go into accounting, right? So I think, you know, there are a lot of opportunities out there. It comes down to just speaking to people in different roles. I mean, I'm happy to speak to someone about the commercial side, sales, marketing side, but if someone has a real interest in another function, then you know, network and learn what that job entails.
Thanks, Magda. I'm going to throw one at Ingrid now. How did you pitch yourself as someone with a science background to go into the venture capital space?
How did I position myself? Is that the question? Or
yeah, but it was
okay.
how you pitched yourself, positioned yourself. Yeah.
Got it. So to be completely honest, I didn't pitch myself. They found me. So I tried to give myself a career path that I thought would give me skills that would relate and would give me exposure to venture capital. So I moved from a business development role to a role at an accelerator, where I was working with early stage startups to help them get funded by venture capital funds, right? So I had to understand the science, and I had to translate that into a value proposition from a business perspective when I was working with these companies, and help them kind of reduce the risk of, you know, from a business operations perspective, in order to kind of get them to a stage where a VC firm would want to invest in them, right? And so my whole positioning was that, look, I can do what you guys have a little bit of trouble doing, which is, you know, understand the technical really, really quickly, but I can be the translation piece between that. So I can reduce these complicated scientific concepts and complicated scientific risks to, you know, a business risk, or define that as a cost center, or, you know, a commercialization plan in terms of how you plan to reduce the risk and build value in this company. And so really, I positioned myself as like a translator between the really, really technical people or the people in the lab and the business people that were looking to put money into some of these companies. And still, even though now I'm an investment director, a lot of what I do is that it's taking a look at something that's very technical, quantifying the risk in, and translating that in layman's terms so that everyone understands what's going on. And then being able to say, okay, to the scientists, this is what you need to do in order to kind of build value to your investors. And really, I would say, we alluded to this earlier, the communication skills and the ability to translate really complicated concepts into small kind of bite-sized fragments for people, that's a skill set that will serve you well no matter where you are and what you're doing. So focus on that. And it doesn't matter whether you're in venture capital or you're in pharma or you're running your own company, that skill will serve you really well.
Well, thank you. Andrea, here's one that's an interesting one that you might be able to answer since you work in the cognitive field. Do you have any study tips that helped you get through school?
Oh, this is a tough question because everyone learns so differently. And I thought at first I really enjoyed studying alone. But I also enjoyed procrastinating alone. And so that was not the ideal study place for me. Sometimes, I would need to do a first pass alone and then have a group of people who were also studying that maybe were a little further along, or we could work through problems or something together. I learn really well by rewriting notes. I have to actually write it out. I can't type it. So very often if I'm trying to remember something, I can remember like what area of the page it was on because I wrote it and that's how I remember things. Cue cards, quizzing your friends, whatever it is, but it's a non-answer, but it depends on your learning style and how you do it. But there are lots and lots now, even on YouTube, of like different studying tips and tricks. There's no shortcut, which is, the unfortunate thing. You do have to put in the time and the work. And if you can't find, a group of friends or something to work with, then you can, I think there are like accountability buddies that you can, even if they're in a totally different field, you can do the work at the same time so they can make sure that you're not procrastinating. But the thing that I think is really underused in university and even in high school is like teachers' office hours and actually asking questions. If you have a question, ask the professor or the TA, and make sure that you can take advantage of the resources that are there, because very often office hours are just open. And so find out what works for you, look up the various resources online and ask questions to the people who control your grades.
Very, very good advice. The one that always used to work for me and what I used to do is I'd always start with my study notes and then I would slowly condense them down until I could get everything down onto one page. So and it's not just writing smaller, it's like trigger words or, an equation that then I could derive other things from or whatever, but just kind of keep going through that iterative process of what are the things that I need to remember that and memorize that will trigger all of the other stuff. And when I got it down to something that was manageable, then I knew I was ready for the test.
And when you can explain it to someone else, explaining it out loud verbally or writing it down as if you're explaining to someone, I think is a really good way to prompt that memory as well. Because if you realize as you're saying something, you're like, I don't actually know what's going on, then maybe you should revise that.
Well, I see we're running out of time here, but there's one more question that I really wanted to ask you all. So we've been doing a lot of work at LSO in the area of inclusion, equity, diversity, and accessibility. You are all successful businesswomen in the life sciences industry. We know that there are, systemic challenges in the way businesses are structured and in the way our academic institutes are structured and our educational institutes. can you tell me a little bit about some of the experiences that you have, or maybe continue to have, that you've either found challenging through your career, and how you've navigated those challenges, or continue to? Who wants to go first? Magda, you're smiling, so over to you.
So I think that for me, the biggest challenge that kind of came up was when I decided to have a family and have kids, and knowing that I'll be taking some time off for maternity leave, and really not wanting that to have an impact on my career. It really took some time to understand a new work-life balance and reprioritize some things. And as my personal life became more demanding with the young ones running around, I found that there's certain skills that I really had to perfect. That was time management, prioritizing, and really becoming efficient at my day job. It wasn't as if I'm just going to work late because I had other priorities. So I actually have become a lot more efficient at what I do during the day. I time manage. I think I've mastered it now. But those skills really helped me have that work-life balance that I was hoping to achieve without having an impact on my progression in my career.
As a father of 3 who took a parental leave, I can tell you I have never sharpened my time management skills as well as I did during those months. Andrea, your thoughts on this question?
Yeah, and I do want to start by saying that I am very happy to sit on the IDEA Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Accessibility Committee within Life Science Ontario, because LSO has recognized, that there needs to be this conversation both within our organization and also broadly within the life science industry. I also do want to recognize my privilege. I'm a cisgendered white woman who's, straight passing and mostly, at least physically, able-bodied. So although I have a disability, it's an invisible disability. So it's very easy to, see what's only on the surface level. I do also want to say that diversity, a lot of people talk about diversity in the workplace, but diversity is really just a fact. You either have a diverse group of people or you don't, but it's the inclusion, the actual effort and the work that's done to bring people together and make everyone feel together and welcome in a space is where the actual work is. And so sometimes, you might get your foot in the door, but you still kind of have to make that space for yourselves within that environment, which puts a lot of extra work on you, but you have to ask for what you need. Sometimes people, even if they have the best intentions, are still learning. And so there are ways that you can bring that up. I did see a question in the Q&A about if you can become a doctor with, if you have a physical disability. And I think the answer is yes, and absolutely. And the world needs more doctors who have that, doctors and people in all roles who have that lived experience, especially when they're interacting with people. So I don't have like a clear, I think a lot of my journey has been kind of making that space for myself, and I'm still trying to, form my own kind of identity and be true to that. But at the same time, recognizing that I can make space for other people and really try and be as inclusive actively as possible.
Thanks, Andrea. Ingrid, the last word is yours.
So I would say I work in a very, very heavily white male dominated sector, right? Venture capital is not known for being diverse or inclusive in terms of, I would say, both gender and background. You tend to end up with a lot of people with similar educational backgrounds that went to similar schools that end up working in this sector. And so for me, a lot of the struggle has been, having appropriate boundaries and being able to say no and put my foot down and not feel bad and be guilted into things, right? So, you know, sometimes things are inappropriate. Like people will say things that they, in my social circles, in my personal life, would absolutely not be acceptable or okay. And I just have to be like, no, you're misguided. Like that's wrong. I disagree, and not have that emotional reaction and urge to be like, oh no, you're wrong. You need to stop that now, which sometimes is neither effective or in my best interests in a professional setting, right? It's just understanding what is my responsibility and what is not, and making peace with that sometimes, because there's only so much you can do in one specific situation as a single person, and sometimes existing in those situations and in those environments and slowly building influence there is important in and of itself. More recently, I've started kind of bringing my personal views about inclusion, you know, into my professional life, which has been very, very interesting. I had a very negative experience last year during some, you know, there were some anti-Asian hate issues going on, and I spoke up against that in a professional setting on LinkedIn and was basically attacked by people from their personal accounts. So a lot of it is a process, and it's understanding when you feel comfortable and have the energy to speak up and do things and to bring your whole self to work. And that concept of bringing your whole self to work that everyone talks about, that is very easy for certain people, and for others, it's a case-by-case decision. And so I think for me, you know, as a visible minority woman in a predominantly white male space, it's about making the decisions that work for me, and sometimes living to fight another day and influence another day. And so that's probably been the toughest piece for me professionally. But beyond that, I'm very, very lucky and privileged in the fact that I'm an educated person. I have a graduate degree. And when push comes to shove, I can fall back on my technical training and say, look, here is why you need to listen to me professionally. And being in VC, I am in a position of privilege where a lot of people do have to listen to me, and I do recognize that. So there is a certain responsibility to speak up occasionally as well. But knowing what you can and cannot manage, that's something that's pretty important. And you'll learn that throughout high school, throughout university, and into your career. You'll continue to learn that and learn how to balance all your priorities.
That's some great advice to end with. We know that you know, cultural change and significant change does take time, but it also takes leadership and champions, and all of you are leaders and champions within life sciences. So thank you for taking the time to share your experiences, your journeys, your insights with our audience here today. I'm apologize that we didn't get to everyone's questions. We had a ton of questions, but that shows great engagement, and that just means we're going to have to do another one of these again soon, I think. So so thank you all for attending. And Brian, I don't know if we have our thank you slides for our sponsors. Here they are. So just a quick thank you to all the organizations that sponsor LSO, and they make events like these possible. So our platinum sponsors shown here, our gold sponsors, and you see BioTalent Canada there. Check them out. I think that'll be a valuable resource for many of you. And our silver sponsors shown here. So thanks again for everyone that attended the session. Thank you to all of our panelists. Really appreciate all that you continue to do for LSO, and we will have to bring this group together again soon, I think. Have a great evening, everyone. Stay safe, and thanks for joining us. Good night.